Hey everybody, how are you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to do a little bit more of a different video, more of a discussion video. Recently I've been thinking a lot about Xenoblade Chronicles as a series as a whole, and with the Nintendo Switch 2 releasing here within the last couple of months as of recording, I just kind of wanted to talk about the future of the Xenoblade series. Xenoblade is, especially the first game, is a game that's really near and dear to my heart, and I really want to see it, be the best that it can, because I think it really excels in its storytelling, its characters, its worlds, its music. I think that the whole series is just really fantastic at what it does in the RPG and Nintendo game scene. So I really want to kind of explore in this video just my thoughts and where I'd like to see the Xenoblade series head in this next generation with the Nintendo Switch 2 and maybe even beyond. I don't know, we'll see where this goes, but I hope you're as excited to take this ride as I am. As always, if you're new to this channel, I'd really appreciate it if you click that like button and subscribe. It really helps me out, helps out the channel, helps us grow. So if you like this type of content and want to see more, just smash those buttons. Let's dive right into this. So I want to split this video into two sections here. The first section, we're going to talk a little bit about the Xenoblade games that are on the Nintendo Switch that are already released. So believe it or not, the entire Xenoblade Chronicles franchise is available on the Nintendo Switch. I've got all of my physical copies right here. I have every physical release of the series on the Switch, and it's really cool. I love that Nintendo's done this, made it available to everyone on one console, which is really great. I'm really glad that they did that. So the first half is going to take a look at kind of what I want to see done to the games that are already released. And then the second half of this video, I'd like to explore, beyond Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, which did release here in 2025. I do want to go beyond that and see, what could potential Xenoblade Chronicles 4 or Xenoblade Chronicles X2 look like. So if you're down for that, let's dive right in. So here in the first section here, I want to dive in, take a look at the Xenoblade games that have been released on the Switch thus far. And now some of them are a little different than the other ones, so I have kind of different paths. And I want to talk about mainly the definitive editions of Xenoblade Chronicles and Xenoblade Chronicles X first. So as you can see, they have the little subtitle Definitive Edition kind of tacked onto them. To me, that kind of just tells me that these are the definitive experiences for these games. On the Nintendo Switch 2 especially, I really think what they could do is just free patches for these games. I really don't see them doing a dedicated Nintendo Switch 2 edition for either of these games, mainly because it would be a freaking mouthful to say Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. That's a little ridiculous. Now, I know Nintendo's been pretty ridiculous with their naming schemes for the Switch 2. Mario Party Jamboree comes to mind. I really think it would be stupid for them to tack on a stupid Nintendo Switch 2 edition subtitle to games that already have a subtitle. So I really think that if they were to do Nintendo Switch 2 updates to these games in particular, they would just come with free patches like they did with Link's Awakening and Echoes of Wisdom and all the other Nintendo Switch games that they updated for free. I think it would be nice if they kind of threw us that bone. Obviously, for Xenoblade Chronicles 1, I'd love for them to do 60 frames at 1080p. The game does not run at 1080p even on Switch 2, and it caps out at 30 frames on Switch 2 as well. So just an update that would do 60 frames 1080 would be the best. This game already is pretty good looking, and I think that having it at 60 frames 1080p would just go the extra mile into making this game look really good in the state that it's in. Obviously, a full-blown remake would make this game just be even more incredible than it already is, but I don't foresee them doing that anytime soon. So just a free patch for this game, 60 1080p. And then Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition is really interesting. I believe it was data mined that there is a 60 FPS mode already coded into this game, which would make sense considering it released here in 2025. So it already looks like an update might be planned for this game. And I believe it does cap out at 1080p if you play it on a Nintendo Switch 2, which is already incredible. This is an amazing looking game on Switch and on Wii U, believe it or not. So I think that updating it, maybe even go to 1440p. I don't know if they could do that, if this would destroy the game or not, but maybe 1440p, maybe even 4K. I'd love to see that happen with Xenoblade Chronicles X, but obviously enabling that 60 frames mode for this game, that would be really cool. So yeah, that's really what I could see them doing on the Switch 2 with these 2 Definitive Edition games, just some free updates. Sometime in the future here, Nintendo, come on. But yeah, that's what I see going on for these. Anyways, I want to talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and 3 now. These are the 2 mainline series that are kind of native to the Switch. They are the console's dedicated Xenoblade games, and I think that these games in particular, if they did end up doing a Switch 2 update to these games, I feel like these would be the candidates to get Nintendo Switch 2 editions or even definitive editions with like a Switch 2 cartridge release. I'll talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 first. I do know that this game had some pretty bad performance issues on the original Switch, especially when it launched originally. So I really think that if they did do a Switch 2 edition, putting that up to 1080p, 60 frames, it's kind of the thing we've seen, but I think from a Nintendo Switch 2 edition, much like what they did with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, they could even kick that up to 1440p, maybe redo a lot of textures and character models, improve the lighting. They could definitely do that for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And then with this game in particular, that does bring in the question of DLC with Torna the Golden Country. I do have the separate DLC cartridge, which, fun fact, this is the only physical release of a DLC that Nintendo has released, at least here in the Switch generation, which I think is cool because you can play this standalone from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 proper. So if you don't have this one, you can still play this one. And I think it's really cool. I think they've only ever done this with like New Super Luigi U. I think that's the only other case of Nintendo releasing a DLC standalone and not requiring the base game to use it. What I really would think is cool for them to do with a definitive edition or Nintendo Switch 2 edition for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is, hey, throw us a bone, include the DLC with it. If they do a Nintendo Switch 2 edition, I could see them just releasing the base game with that upgrade pack with the improved textures and stuff, very much like what they did with Breath of the Wild, where, if you didn't know, Breath of the Wild Nintendo Switch 2 edition does not include the expansion pass, which I think is a little stupid, considering the game is like 8 years old when it released, and it just doesn't include the DLC, which I think is a really ridiculous and kind of a stupid move on Nintendo's part. If they did a Nintendo Switch 2 edition, I could see them not including the expansion pass and Torna. This is backwards, and Torna with it. Now, in a perfect world, if they did decide to do a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Definitive Edition, I would really love to see them, package in Torna and the DLC as part of the Definitive Edition, and then, like with the other Definitive Editions, give us a new side story mode or whatever. Or you could just Definitive Edition, include the DLC, and all, like, Nintendo Switch 2 enhancements, 1440p, 4K even, 60 frames per second. That'd be cool too. But hey, we gotta be realistic here. It's the big N we're talking about. But yeah, so that's what I could foresee them doing with Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Obviously, best case scenario, we get a definitive edition that includes everything and some new stuff. Worst case scenario, they sell us this as a Switch 2 edition, no DLC included, which would be really, really unfortunate, I think. And then finally, we have Xenoblade Chronicles 3 here. Now, this is the other one that I could see them doing a Nintendo Switch 2 edition or definitive edition to. I could see definitive edition happening more with Xenoblade 2 versus Xenoblade 3, just because this is a newer title in the release series, so I really do think this one would end up getting a Nintendo Switch 2 edition. Kind of the same thing that I said with the other Xenoblade games. I think kicking up this game's frame rate and resolution would absolutely do incredible things for this game. If it is a Switch 2 edition or a definitive edition, I'd love to see them go in and touch up all the textures, the character models, the lighting. I have played a little bit of this one as well, and I think it definitely would benefit from those enhancements. Obviously 1440p is what they did with Zelda, and I think they would do it for Xenoblade, but 4K is really ideal in a perfect world. So I mean, I'd love to see this game at 4K. I've seen some people do the emulation with it on PC and kick it up to 4K, and it looks really fantastic. So improved lighting, improved textures and stuff would do that. Now Xenoblade Chronicles 3 does have a DLC expansion like with Xenoblade 2 called Future Redeemed, and if they go with a Nintendo Switch 2 edition, which I think makes the most sense for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, like they did with Breath of the Wild, I could see them just throwing the base game out there with the Nintendo Switch 2 edition update and upgrade pack, and then just saying, hey, you gotta go get the DLC on your own, man. We're not on that, which I think would be unfortunate and really disappointing if they decided to do that. I was really disappointed with Breath of the Wild that they didn't include the DLC on cartridge, so that is a thing that I could foresee them doing. It would be really nice if they learned their lesson and said, hey, we're going to throw in the expansion pass too with the Nintendo Switch 2 edition. It is a couple years old, but I think that would be what would happen to Xenoblade Chronicles 3. So that's what I think what would happen with the Xenoblade games that are already on the Nintendo Switch on their own. Now, in their current state, they are benefiting from the Switch 2 being more powerful, capping out their frame rate and resolution locks, so which is actually kind of low for these games in the resolution department. So baseline, 60 frames, 1440p for those free updates, maybe 4K for the Switch 2 editions. I don't know, I think that would be really cool to see all these games get updated on a Nintendo Switch 2 with the various editions and upgrade paths that Nintendo has introduced with this generation. Alright, so moving on now, I want to talk a little bit about the future, maybe not looking at Xenoblade games we have, but maybe Xenoblade games we could be getting. Now, there's two really paths I see Nintendo and Monolith Soft going for this route. The first one is a Xenoblade Chronicles X2, and then the other being, Xenoblade Chronicles 4. So I want to talk about Xenoblade Chronicles X2 because I feel like this one is something that I think could happen a lot sooner than a Xenoblade Chronicles 4. I've played a good amount of Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. I do like the game. I think it does a lot of really unique things that the mainline titles don't. I think it has its own kind of differentiation from it. Yet you can see that X and 1 are very different games, even though they're in the same series. I think it would be really cool if they stuck with doing that style that X has. Maybe continue the story. I haven't finished the game, so I don't know if there's like a point at the end where it could pick up for a sequel, or maybe a sequel a couple thousand years in the future. Who knows? But I think that the combat systems, the world design, kind of the focus more on exploration than story is definitely unique to X. And I think if they did a sequel, an X2, we're going all Final Fantasy here, an X2 would be cool if they kept those elements. The only thing is, one of my things that I noticed while playing Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition is kind of the less of an emphasis on the story and the characters, which I would like them to kind of improve on and put more of a focus in if they did an X2. Just a little nitpick, obviously, as I go through the game, it might pick up better. If you want to see my first impressions of Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, I'm going to shamelessly plug a video right here. So, yeah, shameless plug moment. Woo! So yeah, I do think that just from my time with X, there are some things I'd like to see improved on Switch 2 with X2 maybe. I think that would be really cool. Just emphasize the story, but keep a lot of the elements that make X, really. Xenoblade Chronicles X2 would be fun. More mechs, please. Give me more mechs to drive. I want to drive more mechs. That would be fun. More mechs, please. And then the other branch I could see them going down is Xenoblade Chronicles 4. I know that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 kind of wraps the trilogy up in a nice tight bow. It kind of bridges the gap between 1, 2, and 3 and shows kind of the end of a trilogy. And the real question is, would they do a sequel to 3 and then start retconning some of the things at the end and kind of how that ties up? Or would they make it a separate continuity? And I really think that either way, I would like to see them make it kind of separate. Not necessarily a spiritual successor like X is to the original Xenoblade, but I would like to see them kind of keep the same timeline going. Just don't retcon anything. I guess you could reference stuff that happened in the main trilogy, but don't retcon the end of 3. Don't brutalize that game's ending to lead into a 4. Now, granted, I haven't finished Xenoblade Chronicles 3, so it is very possible that they left the window open to a 4. So I could be completely BSing here, but, you know, I don't know. I don't think that ruining the ending of a very grand JRPG is the way to go when you're making a sequel. So, yeah, don't do that, Monolith Soft, please. I want to keep the sacred of the Xenoblade trilogy. I want to keep it sacred, so. And obviously, with, if they were to do X2 and 4, I would love to see the technical capabilities of the Switch 2 really brought into these games. You know, higher frame rates, higher resolution. I'd love to see them do some mouse support now. I do kind of like the mouse support. As I'm recording this, Drag X Drive has released, and I am liking the movement with the mouse, and I feel like it's a really interesting gimmick that Nintendo could absolutely use to their benefit with Xenoblade Chronicles 4 or X2. Probably X2 more with some of those mechs, but including mouse modes in those games would be pretty cool. And then I know Xenoblade Chronicles X originally had a multiplayer mode, and they did bring it over for the Definitive Edition, and I think that would be cool to have in an X2, but not so much Xenoblade 4. So keep Xenoblade 4 a single-player focused thing, but, you know, X2 have that kind of multiplayer angle. That's really all I got for this video. I really am interested to see, well, I hit my camera there. I am really interested to see where Monolith Soft and Nintendo are going to take Xenoblade Chronicles in the Switch 2 generation. I'd love to see updates for the main series games that are already out, but I'd also love to see what they do for potential sequels. So with all that said, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on what they could do to improve the Xenoblade games on Switch already, or what you could see them doing, whether it's Xenoblade Chronicles X2 or Xenoblade Chronicles 4, or maybe, hey, it's a spin-off, or maybe save Xenoblade Chronicles 4 for Nintendo Switch 3. Who knows? They really could do anything. We've seen them be very, very unpredictable in this generation. So, yeah, the sky's the limit for Xenoblade Chronicles, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. I need to be ready for when Xenoblade Chronicles 4 is announced in that sacred Nintendo Direct in September, of course, because it's happening 100%. The leaks confirm it. You can't tell me otherwise. Xenoblade Chronicles 4 in the Nintendo Direct in September. It's happening, baby, it's happening. By the way, I did do videos on Xenoblade Chronicles X and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, both Definitive Editions. I did videos on both, so click here if you want to see more of my thoughts on Xenoblade games, because I do have a lot to say, because I like this series quite a bit. So click here for Xenoblade Chronicles X, click here for Xenoblade Chronicles 1, and then there's the channel to subscribe right here. Click that too. Thanks. Bye.